What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today, we are going to learn Power BI in under 3 hours. Now, Power BI is one of the most popular data visualization tools in the world. Of course, it's within the Microsoft ecosystem. And so if your company uses any Microsoft products, you most likely have access to the Microsoft suite, which includes Power BI. I used Power BI for many years as a data analyst, and then when I became a manager of analytics, I actually switched our entire team over to Power BI. And so I know how amazing Power BI can actually be. So we're gonna be taking a look at several things in this long video. We'll start with some of the basics of just creating some visualizations, but we'll dive into a ton of other things as well. By the end of this video, you're gonna be an expert in Power BI. You're gonna be creating all sorts of dashboards and KPIs and reports, and you're gonna be sending all of them to me so I can be really impressed. So without further ado, let's jump onto my screen and get started. All right, so the first thing I'm gonna do is download Power BI Desktop. I will leave this link in the description so you can just click on it, go to it and download it. We're gonna click this download free button. And once we click it, you can go to the Microsoft Store. And I already have it downloaded. So when you see it, it'll already say downloaded, but for you, you can go in here, you can click download and it will download it for you. I'm on Microsoft, but it may look a little bit different for you if you're on a different system. But once that is done, we are gonna open up Power BI. So let's go right down here to our search. Let's go to Power BI. And it is going to open up for us. All right, so right away, this is what it's going to look like when you open it. And we're going to go right over here to get data. And let's click on that. And it's going to open up this window and it's going to give us a lot of different options for where we can get data from. Now, some of these are free and some you need to upgrade from, but just taking a quick glance through here, you have a ton of options. There's databases, there's blob storages, there's PostgreSQL or different SQL databases, there's Google Analytics, there's a lot of places. And you can go through the process to connect to that data and you can pull that data in from those data sources. Now, for what we are doing, we're just gonna be using an Excel. I'm gonna leave the Excel that I'm gonna be using in the description. You can go and download it and walk through this with me. So what we're gonna do is click on Excel Workbook and we're gonna click Connect. So we're gonna go right here in our Power BI tutorials folder and we're gonna click on Apocalypse Food Prep. So let's click on that and it is going to connect and pull that data in. Now right here we have our navigator. And so if you had a lot of different sheets, you can click on that and choose which ones to pull in. I just clicked on it right over here and we're able to preview the data, but I can't load or transform it yet. I need to select which sheets I'm bringing in. So we only have one, so that's the only one we're gonna bring in. So you can go ahead and load the data, or you can click on transform data. It's gonna take us to Power BI Power Query, which is gonna allow us to transform our data. So I'm gonna have an entire video on how to transform the data, but I'm gonna give you a really quick glance at it to kind of show you what it is. So right up here, it says our Power Query Editor, and this is the window to basically transform your data and get it ready for your visualizations. Now you can do this in Excel if you want to and do that beforehand, or you can do it here. And there are lots of things that we can do in here, as you can see at the top. Again, I'll have an entire video dedicated to just Power Query. But let's take a quick look at the data and see if there's anything we want to transform quickly before we actually go and start building our visualizations. So over here, we have the store where we purchased it. We have the product that we purchased, the price that we paid, and the date that we bought it. Now, the first thing that jumps out to me is that this just says date on it. We might want to say date _ purchased. And we're going to hit enter. And if you noticed right over here on these applied steps, it says renamed columns. Everything that you do, every single step that you apply to transform this data is going to be right over here. And if I want to, if I go back and I say, I really didn't want to rename that column, I can just click X and it is going to get rid of that and take it back to its original state. So again, I'm just going to say purchased and we're going to enter that. Now, this is our Apocalypse Food Prep. So this is food that we are buying for the apocalypse for this example. And if we look at our products, we have bottled water, canned vegetables, dried beans, milk, and rice. And all of that stuff makes sense except for the milk. Milk will not stay or last long in the apocalypse. So I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna filter that out really quickly and we're gonna click OK. And right over here again, it says filtered rows. And so now if we scroll down, there's no milk. So what we are going to do is we're gonna go over here to close and apply. and it is going to actually load the data into Power BI Desktop. So on this left-hand side, it immediately takes us to the Report tab. And what we want to do is go right here to the Data tab and take a look at our data. So again, there's our date purchased. And as you can see, the milk is not in there. Another tab that we're going to take a look at, and again, in this Report tab, this is where we actually build our visualizations. The data is where we can see the data and change it up a little bit and change some small things about it, like sorting the columns or even creating a new column. And over here, we have this other tab, and it is called Model. And this is especially useful when you have multiple tables or multiple Excels, and you need to join them to kind of connect them together. We don't have that, but in a future video, I'm going to walk through how to use this entire tab. So now let's go back to the Data tab, and I want to just look at the data really quickly before we go over to the Report tab and we start building our first visualization. As you can see, I've been buying these different products in different months. So this rice I've been purchasing in January, February, March, and April. And I've been buying it from 3 different locations because I wanted to see if I was spending less money at one location on all of the products. So then I would just shop there in the future and save a lot of money. Or if there were specific products that were really cheap at one location, but others, they were cheaper at a different location. And so I should just buy like the dried beans at Costco, but everything else I should be buying at Walmart. And so that's what we're going to look at in just a little bit. So let's go over to the Report tab. Right up here at the top, there's this data section. So you can kind of choose if you want to add any more data now that we are here. We can also write queries or transform the data like we were looking at in the Power Query Editor window. Over here in the Insert, we can add a new visualization or a text box. And then in the Calculation section, we can create a new measure or a quick measure. And then over here, we have Share, where you can actually publish your report or your dashboard online. Now, over on the visualization section on this far right, this is a very important area. This is where a lot of the actual creating of the dashboards happen. So let's take a look really quick, and we'll get into a lot of these things as we're actually building our dashboard. So we're not just sitting here looking and talking, we're gonna be actually building and doing. All right, so we're gonna click right here on this drop down on sheet 1, and it's gonna show us all of our columns. Now, 2 of the things that we wanted to look at were, where are we spending the least amount of money buying the exact same product? That'll help us determine where we want to shop. And the second thing was, should I be buying all my products at the same place? Or are there certain products that they're going to be cheaper at a specific store and I should buy it there? So let's start out with the first one, which we're just going to see with the store and the price, where we're spending the least amount of money. And just at a quick glance, we can see we're spending the least amount of money at Costco at $210 versus Target $219 and Walmart at $225. And that really answers our question, but we want to visualize it better, be able to see it in an easier way. So we're going to go right over here and we can click on a lot of these, but the one that probably makes the most sense is the stacked column chart. And it's going to show Walmart, Target, and Costco. Now they're all the same color. Let's add a legend. So we're just going to drag store over here down to this legend. And let's make this larger while we're working on it. So now we can see we're spending the most amount of money at Walmart, right in between at Target, and then at Costco is the lowest. And so right there, we know that Costco is the place to go for our apocalypse food prep, but is it going to be that way for every product? I don't know. Let's take a look. Let's put this up in this corner and let's start a new one. We're going to need to select the product for sure and the price, and probably additionally the store as well. And let's click on, let's not do this one. We need a clustered column chart. That's what we need. Let's bring this over here. Let's expand this quite a bit. And so really at a glance, this is giving us everything that we need. We can see each product right here, and we can see how much we're paying per store. And so for rice, we're paying, it looks like a lot more for our rice at Walmart, while at Target is actually where we are paying the least. Now, if we look at all of these, it looks like for Costco, the only one that we're really paying a lot more on is on our rice. But for our dried beans, our bottled water, we're paying quite a bit less. And really, it's pretty negligible for these canned vegetables. We're paying maybe 60 cents, 50, 60 cents more per can. So that's pretty negligible. But for the big ticket items, we're really spending a lot less at Costco. If we wanted to save just a little bit more money, we could go to Target for our rice. Now, if I want to make this more like a dashboard and we're only keeping these 2 things, I'm going to kind of size them kind of like this. Whoops. I was going to show you that in a little bit. I'm going to size them a little bit like this. So now that we have that looking good, we want to change the title of both of these. So what we're going to do is go over here in our visualizations and format your visual. And we are going to go to this general, go to title, and now we can name it anything we really want. For this, we're going to say best store for product. And while we're in here, one other thing that I wanted to do is I want to go to this visual. I'm going to go right down here to these data labels. Now we haven't added any data labels. So I'm going to click on and you'll see exactly what it does. It just puts the labels and the numbers above it. So you don't have to actually like hover over it and see what it is. Now it is actually rounding these numbers. So what we're going to do is go down here. We're going to go down to values and we'll go down to display units, and it's on auto. So it's auto rounding those numbers. And we're just going to say none. So we can see the actual value of these numbers. And we can do the exact same thing over here. It probably is a good thing to do. And it just is going to visualize it a little bit differently in here, but you can always change that if you want to. Go over here to title, and we're going to say total by store. And now we're going to take a look. And so in a matter of minutes, we were able to take our data from an Excel, put it into Power BI, transform it a little bit. Then we were able to create these visualizations that gave us concrete answers to some very important topics. We now know that Costco is the place to go for basically every single product, except if we're buying rice. And if we want to save just a few dollars, we're going to head over to Target. And that is genuinely going to change my shopping habits for the next several years until the apocalypse happens. All right, so before we jump over to Power BI and start using Power Query, I wanted to take a look at the data. And this is the Excel from our last video called Apocalypse Food Prep. And in that video, we went through and we bought some rice, some beans, water, vegetables, and milk, all for the apocalypse, getting prepared for that. Now we decided to buy some additional things like rope, some flashlights, duct tape, and a water filter, several water filters. And after we purchased those, our boss or whoever we're working with or somebody decided to go and make a pivot table. Now in this pivot table, they kind of broke it out by Costco, Target, and Walmart and had all the items. Had some subtotals as well as some grand totals right here. And then they decided to kind of copy and paste that into this. And you'll see this a lot when you're working with people who use Excel. They like to kind of make things like this, maybe make it into like a table or format it a little bit differently, but you'll see stuff like this a lot. So this is what we're going to actually pull into Power Query and work with. Now, we're going to imagine that this is all we have. This is the only thing we were working with, and I'll kind of reference this pivot table a little bit, but we're going to pretend this is all we have, and we want to transform it to make it a lot more usable to where we can make visualizations with it. So let's hop over to Power BI and pull this Excel in. So what we're going to do is click Import Data from Excel. We're going to click Apocalypse Food Prep and click Open. And then it's going to bring up this window right here. Now, this is where we can choose what data to bring in. So we can take a preview and just click on it real quick. And this is the pivot table that we were looking at. So it does have that pivot table. So we are able to pull in just a pivot table. And then we have the purchase overview, where it's kind of that formatted thing that we were just looking at with all the colors. We're going to pull both of those in. So we're going to pull in the pivot table and the purchase overview. Now we could just load it, or we could transform it. And we're going to click transform, and that's going to bring us to Power Query. So let's click on transform data. So now really quick, before we actually jump into working through this and transforming it, I want to show you what the Power Query editor looks like. So if we go right over here, we have our queries, and these are the tables that we actually pulled in, and we can click on those and kind of go back and forth between them. Now up top, we have our ribbon, and the ribbon offers a lot of functionality. We have things like remove columns, keep rows, remove rows, split columns. These are all things that we're likely to use when using this Power Query editor. There's also another tab called Transform, where there's a lot of functionality here as well. Things like unpivoting a column or transposing columns and rows, and using a first row as a header. Some of the things that we'll be looking at today. There's also another tab called Add a Column, and this one's pretty self-explanatory, where you can add additional columns like deleting a column, creating an index column, or a conditional column. Those are the three main ones. There's also View, Tools, and Help, but we're not going to really be looking at those today. And then on the far right side, we have our query settings. You can do things like change the name. So we can call it Pivot Table 2022, and it'll update right over here on our query side. And we have our applied steps. Now, our applied steps are extremely important and very, very useful. Anytime we make any change to transform this data, it's going to be documented right here. And then we can go back and look at it, or we can even delete that change in the future if we want to, and go back to a previous version of what we just did. So when we loaded the data into Power BI, it did a few things for us. It chose the source, the navigation, and it promoted the headers. And then it also changed the data type. So if we want to check, we can actually see those things or change those things, like this source right here. We can click on this little icon, and it's going to bring up the actual path where we got this file. So if we wanted to change that, or it changes in the future, we can come here and we can change this file path. But we're not going to do that right now. So let's click on cancel, and let's go back down to change type. So it promoted these headers, and obviously these headers are not correct. We're looking at this pivot table and not the purchase overview, but it changed these column headers. And so in the future, if we wanted to, we could easily change those, but it did that for us, and it changed the type as well. So if you look right here, it says ABC123, all the way over here to where it just says ABC. ABC means it's only going to be text, where ABC123 means it could be basically anything text, or it could be numeric. So now let's go over to purchase overview, and this is the one that we're actually going to be working on the most, but we might be looking at pivot table just a little bit to kind of reference it and see some of the differences. So before we do anything, let's just take a look at how Power BI decided to take this data in. So it chose this Apocalypse Food Prep Overview as kind of the first column, and that was kind of our header or the title of what we were looking at before. And then all these other columns are basically column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5s. So that's something that we're going to want to change in just a little bit. There's also all these blank columns right here at the top, and kind of these null values as we go along. And we'll take a look at those, and we kind of are going to want to get rid of some of this and just clean this up to make it more usable for our Power BI visualizations. This may be perfectly fine and acceptable in an Excel, but when you're pulling it into Power BI, the real reason you're pulling it in is to create visualizations, not just it to look good in an Excel. So we're going to need to clean this up quite a bit. So let's go right up top. The first thing that I want to do is I want to get rid of these top rows. So we're going to go to this top ribbon, and we're going to click Remove Rows. And we're going to select Remove Top Rows, and we're going to select 2 because we have 2 rows of all nulls, and those are completely useless. We just want to get rid of them right away. So let's click OK, and it removed those. The next thing that we want to do is this location, product, and all these dates. These are actually the column headers that we wanted. So what we need to do now is we want to go over to transform, and want to say use first row as headers. And just like that, we have location, products, and these dates as our headers, exactly how we wanted them. Now, let's say for whatever reason, we made a mistake and we needed to go back. We would just select remove top rows, and that would be perfectly fine. Now you can see over here, it promoted the headers, but it's also changed the data type. So before, if we went to before we removed the headers, these were all ABC123, ABC123, because it had a lot of different data types in there. So it just kind of made a generic data type. But when we promoted these headers, the first thing that it decided to do was also change this data type for us, giving us its best guess as to what this data type is. And it decided to do this decimal. So this 1, 2 is a decimal, but we're actually going to change that. And all you have to do is click on this 1.2 or the data type that it has right here for you. And we're going to click on fixed decimal number. And let's do replace current. And now it's just a little bit better. So now it's 2.70, 2.5. And that's normally how we would read values like this, because this is money. So we would normally read it to the second decimal, just like that. And if we have it on the second decimal for some, we should probably have it on the second decimal for all of them. So really quickly, I'm going to go through and I'm just going to change that. And it should be pretty quick. So hang with me for just a second. All right, that is perfect. Now, for the purposes of what we're about to do, we don't actually need these subtotals or this Costco total, Target total, and Walmart total, as well as the grand total, really. We want to get rid of those. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go right over here. We're going to click on this drop down, and we're going to try to filter this data before we actually load it into Power BI. So we're going to filter, and we're going to say remove empty. And let's remove those. and it's going to take out all of those nulls. If we wanted to try to filter this out by saying something like Costco total or Target total, we could do that by going right here, clicking this drop down on products, go into text filters and saying does not contain, and let's do insert. And we're going to say does not contain, and we want to say total. And let's click OK. And again, it filtered out all of those things. So there's a few different options that you can do if you want to filter out rows that contain either null values or specific values. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is actually get rid of a column, this grand total column. And so what we're going to do is we're going to click on the very top part where it says grand total. We're going to go back over here to home, and we're going to click on remove columns. And it says insert. That's because we're on this filtered rows 1 right here. But what we're going to do is just insert that, and it'll insert it right there. That's totally fine. We can just move it to the bottom. Now we got rid of this column entirely. Now, this looks really good visually. I like how this looks. I like how everything is set up. The biggest thing about this is that when you're actually wanting to use this for visualizations, these columns as dates doesn't really work too well. And so what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to transpose this or pivot this to where these dates are actually rows. So what we're going to do is select the first date, which is January 1st, all the way through April 1st. And we're going to hit Shift and click on that April 1st right there to select all of them at the same time. And then we're going to go over here to the Transform tab, and we're going to click Unpivot Columns. And let's see what this does. And so now what we've done is we've basically recreated our original Excel that we had. So let's go back and take a look really quickly at that. So this looks almost identical to what we have in Power BI right now. And this is extremely usable and very good for visualizations and is much, much better than this. But again, we were pretending that this is what we were given at the beginning. So you have to imagine, somebody just handing you this, and you need to make it much more usable for visualizations in the future, which happens a lot. And we actually wanted to create this, we just weren't given this. Now, a few last things that we might want to do is we want to clean this up just a little bit. We're going to select the data type and change this to date. And then we're going to select the value. And I double clicked on the value, and I actually want to call this cost or product cost. Product underscore cost. And then for the location, I actually want this to be called store. So now this looks really good. But I want to show you one thing really quickly on this pivot table 2022. So let's go back here. This looks very similar to how we had it when it first started. One thing I wanted to show you really quickly, and I want to click on this first one. We're going to make this our column header, and then we're going to try to pivot or unpivot this January, February, March, April. So really quickly, let's do that. So we're going to transform, use first row as headers. So now we have this January, February, March, April. Now, if you notice, these are not dates. These are actually text. It says January, February, March, and April. So if we go to do this and we click unpivot, and here's the columns that are created when we unpivot it. It is January, February, March, and April. These are not dates. So we cannot go and change this to a date because that would error out because it's actually text. So it's something that you want to look out for. It's something that you need to be aware of, and you can change that in the pivot table. So you want to be aware of how it actually sits and looks in the Excel or whatever data source you're pulling from before you actually pull it into Power Query to transform. And now the very last thing that we need to do to finalize all of this is go over here to close and apply. And once we click that, everything that we've worked on is going to be applied to the actual data, and it's going to load into Power BI to create our visualizations. So let's go ahead and click on that. And so now the data has been pulled into Power BI. Let's go right down here to data, and we can see the data right here. If we need to transform this data again, we can bring it back into the Power Query editor window by just clicking the transform data button, and it's going to bring us right back. All right, so before we jump over to Power BI and start creating our relationships and our model, I want to take a look at the data in Excel. We realized we were buying so many products for the apocalypse that we decided to start our own store, and we have several customers and some client information down here. And so I wanted to take a look at some of the columns and these tables that we're going to be looking at. First thing we have is the Apocalypse store. These are the things that we are selling. I know it's a very limited inventory, but these are the really high sellers. These are the ones that I wanted to sell. So we have this product ID, our product name, price, and production cost. Then we have this Apocalypse sales. This is how many sales we've actually made to our customers. So we have this customer ID, our customer name, product ID, order ID, units sold, and the date it was purchased. And then we have our customer information right here. Here are all of our clients. So we have this customer ID, customer, address, city, state, and zip code. So now that we've taken a look at our data, let's go and load it into Power BI. So we're going to say import data from Excel. We're going to choose this model right here. I'm going to click open. And we are going to want all three of these. So I'm going to click on all of them and we're just going to load it. We're not going to transform the data at all. So now the data has been loaded. Let's go right over here on the left-hand side to our model tab. And let's scoot this over just a little bit and move back. And we're going to move these tables up to where it's a little bit easier to see. So right off the bat, you can already see that there are these lines between these tables. So there are already relationships that Power BI has automatically detected and created. From my experience, Power BI actually does a really good job at creating these relationships automatically, but we're going to go in and take a look at these and kind of see what everything means. And then we're going to go back and create these relationships from scratch just to make sure that we know how to do every single part. So to get us started, let's double click on this line connecting the customer information table to the Apocalypse sales table. And it's going to bring up this edit relationship page right here. So this line right here connecting these two tables actually gives us quite a bit of information without actually having to click into this edit relationship page. What this is showing is that we have a one-to-many relationship, and there's only one or a single cross-filter direction. And you can find both of those things right down here, and I'm going to walk through what those mean in just a little bit. On this page, you can also see the columns that Power BI decided to choose in order to tie these two tables together. Now, for our example, they decided to use the customer and customer right here from the customer information table, as well as the Apocalypse sales. But I don't really want to use those specifically because on this Apocalypse sales table, I might remove this customer information and just keep the customer ID. It may have chosen these customer columns because they have the exact same name and really the same information, but I want to use this customer ID anyways. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that column and click on this column, and then I'm going to click OK. And if we go back into it by double clicking again, we're going to see that it now saved that. And if we did what we just did before, which is kind of hover over it, it's going to show us what those two tables are joined on. So opening this back up, let's go down here to this cardinality and cross-filter direction. Cardinality has several different options that you can choose from. You have one-to-many, one-to-one, one-to-many, and many-to-many. Now for this example, we're looking at Apocalypse sales, and we're going Apocalypse sales down to customer information. Now there are a lot of rows in the Apocalypse sales, but there's very few in this customer information. And there's only one customer per row. Whereas in the Apocalypse sales up here, the customer can have several rows for several different orders. So that's why the cardinality is many to one. Now, if we flip this and we say we want the customer information here, and we want the Apocalypse sales down here, and we tie that together, now it's going to flip and it's going to say one to many. Now let's look at the cross filter direction, and there's only two options here. It's either single or both. And if we choose both, and we click OK, this now goes from a single arrow pointing in one direction to two arrows pointing in both directions. But what does this really mean? So in order to demonstrate this, I'm going to put this back to a single direction. And what we're going to try to do is connect the data over here, or the columns over here, to the columns in this Apocalypse store. So let's go over here to build a visualization. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this customer information, and let's just say we want to look at state. So I'm going to click on state right here, and I'm just going to make this into a table. And the customer information table is only tied right now to this sales table. So we're actually going to go over to the Apocalypse store, and we want to see how many product IDs are being bought in these different states. So really quickly, we're going to come up here and create a new measure. And all we're going to say is this measure is the count of Apocalypse store product ID, and we're going to create that. And now we're going to select it so it's added to that table. So now what this is showing is that there are 10 product IDs, which there are 10 products for each of these states. But that's not actually technically correct because not every state purchased these 10 different items. If we go back to our model and we change both of these to a both direction, and then we're going to go back and see what changed in our numbers. So now let's go back to our visualization. And now we can see that Minnesota actually only ordered 7 different product IDs, Missouri 8, New York 9, and Texas 10. This is actually much more accurate than before. When you use the both option, it takes these tables and treats them as if they are a single table. But the single option is not going to do that. And so for our example, if we're trying to connect this table to this table, and one of the last things that I want to show you is this option right down here, which says make this relationship active. Now, if we don't click this and there are other options in here that connect these things like the customer to the customer, then that may be the active relationship. But if I select this is the active relationship, that means this is going to become the default relationship between these two tables. So now let's come out of here. We're going to click cancel. We're going to zoom in just a little bit and bring these tables a little bit closer so we can zoom in just a little bit more. Now we are going to go ahead and delete these. So we're going to say delete, yes, and delete, yes. So just for demonstration purposes, we're going to build these relationships from scratch. So we're going to come over to the customer information table and we're going to drag it all the way over here and put it on top of this cust ID or the customer ID in Apocalypse Sales. And it's going to automatically create that relationship. And we can open this up. And as you can see, it created the relationship between this customer ID in the Apocalypse Sales and the customer ID in the customer information. It also defaulted the cardinality from many to one and the cross filter direction to single. So we're going to go ahead and change that to both and click OK. And then we're going to come over here to the product ID in Apocalypse Store and drag this over the product ID in the Apocalypse Sales. And again, if we open it up, it created that relationship for us. It created the cardinality automatically. And we're going to change this cross filter direction to both and click OK. And so on a really small scale, that is how it works. Of course, it becomes a little bit more complex the more tables that you add and the more relationships that are created. But this is how you're going to actually create the relationships in the model tab within Power BI. All right, so let's take a look at our tables and data before we get started. So we have two tables, the Apocalypse Sales and the Apocalypse Store. For this Apocalypse Sales table, we have the customer, product ID, order ID, units sold, and the date it was purchased. And then for the Apocalypse Store, we have product ID, product name, price, and production cost. Now these are joined together, or they do have a relationship together via the product ID. So what we're going to be using are these new measures and new columns to create our DAX functions. So really quickly, let's go over to this report tab and let's drop down our fields over here so we can see everything. And so to get us started, we're going to go right up here to Apocalypse Sales. We're going to right click and click New Measure. And it's going to open up this right here, which is basically our bar where we can create our functions. And so right here, it's automatically giving us the name measure, but we can change that and we're going to say count of sales. So now we can start writing our DAX function. That's just going to be the name of it and what's going to show up right over here once we click enter. So let's go over here and we're going to say count. And as we're typing, it's automatically giving us options. It has something called IntelliSense. If you've ever used other Microsoft products, IntelliSense is their kind of auto completion that helps you look at other options very quickly. And so we're just going to click on this count and it's prompting us to put in a column name. And so we can come down here and we can select one, or we can type it out and it'll try to predict and help us choose which column to select. So for us, we're going to use this order ID, but let's just start typing it out. We'll say order ID, and then we can click on it. And we're going to close this parentheses and click enter, or you can go over here and click this check mark, but we're just going to click enter. And so over on this right side, it finalized that and saved that. And we can actually look at that by clicking on this box next to it. And we want to look at this in a table. So now we can see that there are 74 sales. Now, for this, we want to see who's buying our products. We want to see what our client name is. So we're going to go over here and we're going to choose customer, and we're going to put customer on top of sales. And we're just going to take a look at it like this. So now we can see that our number one customer is Uncle Joe's Prep Shop. He has 22 orders. Now they have the most orders with us, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're spending the most money with us, but we can take a look at that later. The next thing that I want to take a look at is how many products we're actually selling. What are our big products that we're selling? We have 10 different items, but I don't know exactly which one is selling the best, if one is doing really poorly and getting no orders. This is something that I want to look into. So all we're going to do is go right back up here to Apocalypse Sales again, right click and select New Measure. And for this one, we're going to call it the sum of products sold. And all we're going to start out with is by doing sum. And if this seems familiar to something like Excel, you're 100% correct. It is very similar. And remember, these are both Microsoft products, so there's going to be similar functionality in both of them. And so this DAX is going to have a lot of similarities to exactly how it has it in Excel. So we're going to do an open bracket. And now what we're going to choose is this units sold. We want to sum up all of these units sold and see how many we're actually selling. So we're going to say units sold. I'm going to hit tab. It's going to auto complete that. I'm going to close my parentheses and I'm going to come over here and click this checkbox. So now it's created that measure and we're already selected in this table. So all we have to do is click the check mark and it's going to show us that we have 3,000 total products sold. And we can go through here and see what the big sellers are. And probably the biggest one that I see right off the bat is this multi-tool survival knife. So these DAX functions that you can write can be very simple and lead to really good insights that you can use for the visualizations later on. Now I want to take a look at the difference between something like sum, which is an aggregator function, and something like sumx, which is an iterator function. Because if you add x to some of these aggregator functions, you can create them or make them into an iterator function. So you can have sum and sumx or average and averagex. Adding x onto the end of them can make them into an iterator function. So let's take a look and see how that actually works. I'm going to show you the difference and then I'm going to talk through the difference at the end. So really quickly, let's go back to our data. And let's go to the Apocalypse store. Now, what we have right here is we have the price and we have the production cost. And we want to see how much profit we're getting from each of these, as well as we can take a look at the units sold and see how much money we are actually making. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back over here. We're going to go to Apocalypse store. We're going to right click and create a measure. And in just a little bit, we're going to be creating a new column and that'll kind of show the difference really well. So we're going to create this new measure and we're going to name it profit. And we're going to come over here. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the sum. Oops. We're going to start with our sums. We're going to take the sum of the price. And then we're going to close that parentheses. And we're going to subtract the sum of the production cost. So all that does is it says if something costs $20, if we sold it for $20 and it only costs us $10, that's $10 in profit for that item. And then what we're going to want to do is we're going to actually want to encapsulate that really quickly because we're about to use multiply. And then we're going to sum. And now we're going to take the units sold. So how many units were actually sold at that profit that we just made. So let's see if that works. And let's click the check right here. And so we have the profit. So let's click on the profit. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Let's use a new one. Let's create a new table. We're going to click profit. And let's make it a table. And I'm going to pull this right over here. Now we have our profit, but what I really want to know is which customer is spending the most money at my store. So we're going to come right over here. We're going to click on customer and I'm going to put customer at the top. And just at a glance, we can see that Uncle Joe's Prep Shop is spending the most money at the store. Now, what I want to show you is the difference between sum and sumx. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to this profit and going to copy this entire thing. And we're going to go back here to this table. Now we just created a measure and we were able to break it down by each customer. So let's go back over here. Now let's go up here to home and we're going to create a new column and we're going to call this profit underscore column. And we're going to literally paste the exact same thing into here. And we're going to hit enter. And each row is the exact same thing. So what it's doing is it is going through the price and it's adding all of it up and calculating it at the bottom. It's adding the production cost. It's going all the way down and calculating it at the bottom. And then it's going over and looking at how many units it sold. And then it's performing this calculation up here. And then it gives us the total and it's doing it for every single row. But that's not really what we want it to show. What we want it to show is the profit for each row. What we want it to say is here's the price for the rope, the production cost for the rope, and then how many units we actually sold. And then it'll calculate that and give us the actual profit for just that row. But we cannot do it by just using this sum. What we need to do is use something called SumX. So let's add another column. Let's go back to home. I'm going to say new column. And now we're going to say profit underscore column underscore sum X. And now we're going to use sum X and hit tab. And we need to choose the table that we want to put this in. So we're going to say apocalypse sales, because that's the table that we're looking at right here. We're going to say comma. And now we need to input an expression, which it says it returns the sum of an expression evaluated for each row in a table. Before, when you're just using sum, it's looking at all of these combined. Now it's taking it row by row. So what we're going to do is basically input the same thing as we did before. I'm going to copy, I'm going to paste that. It's not going to be correct. I need to get rid of these sums. But it's basically the exact same equation. Give me just a second. And let's get rid of this sum. And let's see if this works. So let's click the check button. And now this looks a lot better. So what this is now showing us is at a row level, this nylon rope made us $51,000, almost $52,000. The waterproof matches made us $15,000. And we can go down and look at each item and see how much that actually made us versus this profit column. And so that is the biggest difference between sum and SumX. Hopefully that made sense. I know that sum and SumX and the difference between an aggregator function and an iterator function can be a little bit confusing, especially if you've never done it before. But hopefully that was a good example for you to understand that concept. Now let's go back over here to Apocalypse Sales. Right here we have a date purchase. Now in the DAX function, we have some ways that we can interact with dates. And so I want to take a look at those really quickly. So we're going to go right up here and click on new column. And we're just going to leave that as column. But what we're going to say is day. So there's a few different ones. We have day, dates, YTD, next day, previous day, and weekday. And they all are pretty self-explanatory. If you click on it, let's click on weekday. It says it's going to return a number from 1 to 7, identifying the day of the week of a date. So let's use this really quickly. And so we're going to say date purchased and click tab, hit comma, and it's going to give us 3 different options basically. It's a 1, a 2, and a 3. Right here, if you hit this button, read more, you can read more on it. This is going to say Sundays equal to 1, Saturdays equal to 7. I like this one personally, which is Monday equals 1. In my brain, it just makes more sense. So I'm going to click on 2. I'm going to close that parentheses, and we're going to, I guess I'll say, let's say day of week for the column. Let's click that checkbox. And now Saturdays are equal to 6s, Mondays are equal to 1. This allows us to see which day of the week people are buying the most products on, or which day of the week is somebody submitting their orders on. And so let's go over to our report. Let's get rid of this. We're just going to move this. Oh geez, I hate moving stuff sometimes. All right, really quickly, I want to show you the difference between what we just did and what we already have. So we have this date purchased, and let's make that into a bar graph. And what we're going to be taking a look at is actually the units sold. So right here, we have this, and obviously we don't want 2022, we're going to get rid of the year. We only have 1 quarter. Right here, we can see January, February, March. So we can tell that January has the most sales or the most units sold in that month. If we get rid of that, we go down to day, we do have some information, but we don't know what day of the week it is. It could change from month to month. And it's really hard to tell exactly if there's any pattern there at all. That's where what we just created comes in handy. So let's recreate this exact same thing, but instead we're going to use day of week. So we're going to select day of week and units sold. Let's drag that down and move this over right here. And this day of the week should be on the x-axis. And it's really easy now to see if there's a pattern here. There's really not, at least not for this fake data that we have. But I want these data labels on really quickly. It's not easy to see if there's any pattern. Again, Monday has the most. So maybe it goes down a little bit and then it picks back up. So maybe middle of the week is our least sales day. Our Wednesdays and Thursdays are a little bit lower than the rest, and the beginning and the end of the week tend to be the highest. Again, not a huge pattern, but it's much easier to see if there is a pattern from week to week or what day of the week now that we use this weekday function. And so this can be really, really useful. Let's go back here to our data. And now we're going to look at our last DAX function for this video. Let's go up here and create a new column. And we're going to be looking at something called the if statement. Now, if you've ever used Excel, I'm sure you have heard of this, and you can do the exact same thing here in Power BI. And so we're going to name this one order size, order_size. And so all we're going to say is IF. We're going to click on this one right here. We need to perform our logical test. And then we want to say if it's true, what's our value? And if it's false, what is our value? So what we're going to be looking at is units sold. So we're looking at order size. So we're going to say if units sold is greater than 25, what's going to happen? If it is true, if the order is larger than 25, we want to say it's a big order. And if it's not, we want to say it's a small order. Super simple. We'll close up parentheses. We'll click OK. And now really quickly, we're able to see if this is a big order or a small order. And so that is all I have for you today. There are a lot of other DAX functions, but the ones that we looked at today are ones that are very common, ones that you'll see the most. And there can be a lot of really complex and intricate DAX functions that you can create. And in our project at the end of this series, I will be sure to include some more complex DAX functions. But hopefully this gave you a good introduction into DAX so you know how to use it a little bit better. All right, so before we get started, I wanted to remind you that you can find the data that we are going to be working with in this tutorial in the description. You can go and download it from my GitHub. Now, the two tables I'm going to be looking at are Apocalypse Sales and Purchase Tracker. And if you've ever created any visualizations, you've probably seen something like this where you'll have the store and the price, and this is the things that we actually bought. So this is the total amount of Apocalypse prepping equipment that we bought. And we'll put the store in this legend right here. And you've probably seen something like this. And if you're anything like me, you're going to be in a meeting and you're going to be presenting this, and some higher up is going to be like, hey, Alex, that looks great, but I want to, see what things we actually bought in Target and how much this cost. Can you create a visualization for that? And you're going to be like, well, I could, or I could use drill down. And so you could have done this in the first place, which you should have. So what we're going to do is we're going to say the product right here, and these are going to be the actual things, and we're going to put it right under store. Now you can't see these things, right? But there is a hierarchy here. So once we added this, these options became available. Let's take it out, and all those just disappeared. And then if we add it back right here, they came back. And so you can do right here, which is click to turn on drill down. You can go to the next level in the hierarchy, or you can even expand all down one level in the hierarchy. So let's look at each of those really quickly. So let's click on this one. It's just going to turn on drill down mode. So now if I go and I click on target, it's going to drill down into these. And if we want to, I can then put product under this legend. And we can see all of those things. But of course, if we go back up, it's going to be all broken up into this clustered column chart, which is more like this, which isn't exactly what we were going for, but it works. Now, let me get rid of this. I actually want store in the legend. Now, if we turn that off and we click, it doesn't do that anymore. So what it does now is it just highlights Walmart, it highlights Costco, it highlights Target. So we're going to keep that on, but we can also do something called going down the next level of hierarchy. So let's click on that. And so now this is going to go down to the next level, down to this product level, because that is the next level. And now it's going to show us each of those things, but it's going to have it broken out by the store. And so it's a completely different visualization, but all within the same realm of the data that we're looking at and what we actually care about. So let's go back up in the hierarchy, and then let's use this one right here, which is expand all down one level in the hierarchy. And so this one is, again, extremely similar, except it just visualizes it differently. And now what it's doing is Walmart rice, Target dried beans, Costco rice. So instead of having it all like this one, where it's stacked on top of each other, it's breaking it down individually. So this one column would become 3 separate columns. Now I'm going to minimize this right here. I'm actually going to go back up in the hierarchy, just for visual purposes. Now I'm going to show you one more example. We're going to use this Apocalypse Sales up here. And this is one that I actually use all the time. So the one you've seen, you'll get stuff like that, especially if you're working with like sales and stuff. But I work in operations, right? So I have a lot of order IDs, product IDs, stuff like that. Now this one genuinely I use quite often. I'll have a customer. Let's make it, we'll just go like this. We have a customer and we have units sold. And let's use the customer as the legend. So let's make this one quite a bit larger. And I'll have something like this and they'll say, okay, well, we want to see the order IDs that go with it because we want to know what orders are actually happening for each of these people. Obviously, I'm not using this exact data, but very, very, very similar. Now, all you have to do is take these order IDs and slide it right under here under customer. And this visualization right here is something I've done 1,000 times because what happens is some stakeholder in our company is saying, hey, Alex, we want this and we want to drill down on this IP address. We want to drill down on this certain database. We want to drill down on something and we want to see the order IDs within them. So then all you do is you turn on drill mode or drill down mode, you'll click on it and you can see every single order ID that's in there. And then they can go and look those up in their system and resolve them or whatever they're trying to do with it. And it helps a ton. And it's very, very useful. This one is extremely applicable. And that's really all drill down is. Again, you have these different hierarchies as well. But for different things, it's not as useful, as you can see. We also have this hierarchy, which again is not as useful. So it just depends on the data that you're using and how you want to use this drill down effect. But I promise you that drill down is used all the time, especially when you're giving presentations where people want to know more information than just the visualization that you're presenting. All right, so before we get started, I wanted to let you know you can go and download the data that we're going to be using in this tutorial. In the description below is on my GitHub. So we are going to be looking at bins and lists today. And for this, we're going to be going over here to this Apocalypse Sales. And let's open up our data right over here. And we want to look at Apocalypse Sales. Really quickly, I feel like more people would know what a bin is. So we'll kind of start with a list, just go a little bit backwards than we normally would. I'm going to use this customer, or we're going to use this customer column right here for a list really quickly. And you can do that in two ways. You can come up here and you can right click on the customer and go to new group. Or you can come over here under this the field section on the far right and go to customer, right click and click new group. So let's click on that now. And right now is only giving us the list type. It's not giving us bins because bins have to be numeric. So we really can't do that at the moment. So we're going to call this just customer groups, or we'll actually call it list just so it's easier to recognize when we create it. And so all we're going to do is we're going to basically group these, but it's going to be called a list. And so what we're going to do is we're going to select and we're going to select and we're going to say group and click on this group button. And then it creates this Alex the Analyst Apocalypse Preppers and this Prep for Anything prepping store. So that it kind of named it for us. But if we double click on it, then we can rename this and we can call this the best prepping stores. And then we have these last two and we can click on one and then click Control and click on the other one so we get both of them. And then we can click group and we can call this, and we'll double click and we'll call this the worst prepping stores. And then that's it. And that's all we have to do. And what we're then going to do, and if you want to undo this and you want to switch it up and do whatever, you can click on group, but we're not going to do that. We're going to click OK. And here is the column that it created. And it basically tells us what list we put it in. If it's Uncle Joe's Prep Shop, that's in the worst prepping stores list. And if it's the Alex the Analyst Apocalypse Preppers, that is in the best prepping stores. So it's kind of like an if statement. You could even create a calculated column, do it on this customer, create an if statement. This is just a lot faster and a lot easier than doing that, but it basically would do the exact same thing. Now you can use lists as well on things like numeric. So let's say we have order ID and we'll go to new group and it's going to auto go to bin because typically that's what you'll use, but you can do list as well. And let's say, we want to call these like we'll group these and call these the first, we'll call this the first customers or the first orders because we're looking at order IDs. Look at the first orders. And then we will go back here. We're going on the left side. We're going to click. Oops. We're going to go back to the top. We're going to hit Shift, group all of these, and we'll say the latest orders. And you absolutely can do this. Again, this is kind of like an if statement, right? So you're saying if it falls between this range and this range, then it's called the first orders. And if it's between this range and this other range, it's the latest orders. Again, it's just a much simpler version of an if statement. And so you don't have to write it all out. You can just have this user interface kind of do it for you. And it's really, really useful. So now let's talk about bins, and by far the easiest way to demonstrate this, and I'll show you one other way, but by far the easiest way to show this is by using age. And so for absolutely no reason whatsoever, these customer IDs who are right here in this customer information, they decided to give us some of their buyer information who are actually buying their products on their website or in their store. They just decided to give it to us as well as some simple demographic information. I don't know why. But what we're going to use bins for is grouping these age brackets. So, you might be interested in say, well, I want to know if my core population who are buying my products are within a certain range. And you don't want to look at every single age because then it just, in your visualizations, it's not going to look right. You want to kind of group them and make it easier to visualize. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through here and we're going to basically go by tens. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. And see what age bracket these people fall in. So we're going to go to age, we're going to right click, and we're going to say new group. And we're going to go to bin, and we'll leave it as the default age bins. And you can do two things. You can do the size of the bins, which splits it by this number right here, or you can go based on the number of bins. So if you only want to do 5 different bins, it'll calculate that for you. And it'll say, okay, if you only want 5 bins, you're going to have to do it at 12.2. If you want 10 bins, it can be 6.1. But it is completely up to you on how you want to do that. You can do the size and we'll just say every 10, which is what we're going to do. Or you can go through and then you can create, how many bins you actually want. So let's go ahead and click OK. And it's going to create those bins for us. So if somebody is 78, they're going to be in the 70s bin. If somebody is 41, they'll be in the 40 bin. If somebody is 29, they'll be in the 20 bin, and so on and so forth. So when we go to visualize this, we don't have 71, 72, 73, 74, have a lot more things on our visualization. It'll just be the 70, or it'll just be the 20. Now we can also use bins on dates as well. So let's go back to Apocalypse Sales. We have this date purchased, so we can create a bin for this as well. So let's go to date purchased. Let's go new group. Now, you can also create a list, and that's totally fine if you would like to do that. And it would look kind of like this, where you can go through and you can select it and you can say, okay, this group, all these dates, you can group those and say this is going to be January. And you can do that, and that's totally okay. But for this one, we're going to do bins. I think it's a little bit easier to do bins because what we can do is go right here and we can specify what we want: seconds, minutes, hours, days, months, or years. And so for the data that we have, it goes January, February, and March. So we're going to do months, and we're going to say the bin size is going to be 1 month. So each month should have its own bin. So it'll be 3 bins total. So we're going to select OK. And as you can see on this right side, we have January of 2022. And that correlates to the January over here. Then it goes down to February, and then it goes down to March. And then when we visualize this, we don't have to do the hierarchy stuff that we do in here where we filter it down to months. We can just use this right here, and that will be our months column. So now let's go over to our visualizations, and we'll see how this looks really quickly. We're not going to look at all of them, but we will take a look at a few of them. So the first one that we can look at is age. So let's look at the buyer ID. And then we'll do age as well. And so let's spread this out. And we can see our distribution of our buyers. So it looks like we have very few who are in the 10 range, thank goodness. And we can even put the age right under here, under the age bins. And we have this, now we kind of have this drill down. And so if we go right here and we drill down right there, this will actually give us the breakdown. So this is what it would have kind of looked like, our visualization would have looked like if we had just kept it the age, because now we're drilling down into the age. And so it looks like we have one 18-year-old and maybe a 20-year-old as well. Let's go back up. Yeah, so it looks like we only have one buyer ID. Yeah, so there's only one 18-year-old. So of legal age to start buying, all these prepping equipment and probably buying online and stuff like that, which makes sense, right? So this gives you kind of a quick breakdown in the bins rather than doing it the alternative way. So now let's take a look at the customer list as well as the units sold. And it looks like the best prepping store is actually performing much worse, surprisingly, than the worst prepping store. All right, so before we get started, if you want to use the data that we're using in this video, you can find it in the description on my GitHub. Now, conditional formatting is super simple, and you've most likely used it in Excel before, but you can also use it in Power BI, and let me show you how to do that. So the first thing we're going to do is come over to our Apocalypse store, and we're going to pull up our product name as well as the price. And what we can do is come over here, and we're going to go to price, and it has to be under the columns, so you can't come over here and do this. We're going to come right over here to price, and we're going to right click, and let's go to conditional formatting, and we have background color, font color, icons, and web URL. Let's take a look at background color first. This is most likely the one that we'll look at the most. So we're going to get this pop-up, and I'm going to slide this over. Now, there's a lot of different things we can customize in here. And the first thing I want to take a look at is format style. We have the gradient, and what it's going to say is the lowest value will be this color, highest value will be this color. It'll give us this gradient color scale. And so we'll use that in just a little bit, but we can also create rules, kind of like an if statement. And if it is between this range and this range, we'll give it a color. And if it's between a different range and a different range, we'll give it a different color. So we'll also try that one. And then we have this field value, and this one is one that honestly I don't use that much. I've used it maybe once. And what you can do is select a text field like customer, and you can do some summarizations on the first and last, and that is it. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at gradient specifically for not the customer, but we're going to go back to the Apocalypse store, and we're going to do it on the price. Now, what I'm going to do is keep it as the count, because this is what the default is, and we're going to go back and fix it later. But what we want our lowest value to be is this bright green, showing that it's a cheap product, it's easy to purchase. The high value ones are going to be just this shade of red, more expensive. And we'll do it on the count. Now, remember, the count is on each of these, and we're not doing a count of how many are sold, we're doing a count of each product. So it's just one per row. So it all should be the same color. Let's take a look. So it is all the same color. But what we really want to show is the actual price, not just the count of the price. So let's go back to conditional formatting. We're going to click the background color again. And this time we're going to change the summarization. Now, you can do sum, you can do average, minimum, maximum. It really doesn't matter for this example. The number is the same regardless of really which one we choose. So we can just choose the minimum, and it's going to choose the minimum of each row, which is the price. So we're just going to select minimum for this example. We'll select OK, and it should correct it accordingly, which means the bright green is the lowest, and it goes all the way up to the highest, which is the red. Now let's go over here to Apocalypse sales. We'll add in the units sold, and let's move that out a little bit. And I'm doing that on purpose because we're about to look at something within the conditional formatting. So let's go to units sold, and we'll look at the conditional formatting for this one. Now, if you noticed, we now have a new one on here called data bars. Now we're able to see data bars on units sold and not price, because units sold is something like a sum, an average, something that's aggregated. But let's take a look at data bars, because I want to show you how to use this, and then we'll go back to the background color. So for data bars, we are going to be taking a look at the lowest to the highest value. Again, we're going to go from bright green all the way to this exact red. It's going to be from left to right. And what it's going to show you is if it is a positive number, which all of these are, is going to be a green bar basically representing the number that you see in here along this line. So let's click OK. And we're going to be able to see the highest numbers. And let's scooch this over quite a bit so you can kind of get a better understanding. And we're going to do it from highest to lowest. So we sold the most multi-tool survival knives at 477. And so this entire bar, this row, is entirely filled up, or almost all the way filled up, while as it gets lower and as we sell only 182 solar battery flashlights, the bar is going to represent that and show that. Now, I'm about to completely mess up this visualization on purpose because it's about to get very messy to show you that you can do a little bit too much. It is possible. What we're going to do is we're going to go right over here to this background color units sold, and instead of gradient, let's look at rules. Now, with the price, we just did a gradient scale, but we can do basically groups of these and say if a number is greater to or equal than this number, then it's going to be a certain color. And then if it's in a different range, we can give it a different color. So we're going to say if it's greater than or equal to 0, and we're going to say number, not percent. And if it's less than 266, because we have 265 right here, let's make it a nice like gold, a beautiful, lovely mustard gold, just great. Now we're going to say if it's greater than or equal to, and we'll do 266, because this says less than 266, so it should be greater than or equal to 266 number. And if it is less than, we'll say 500. Now we want to do this one, and we'll give it, let's do like a peach. And we'll click OK. And now we have another conditional formatting on top of that that can give us more information. Now, again, you should not do this. It's just too many. Now let's go one step further and make it even more ridiculous and show you one more thing before I show you how you may actually want to use this. Let's go back to units sold. We're going to right click, go to conditional formatting, and you can do something called icons. Font color is the exact same thing as background color, except it changes the font. And so I'm not really going to look into that one. Icons are very simple, extremely similar to Excel and how you've seen them. And the rules that you can apply to them are basically the same as if you're doing like a gradient. And it's these if statements that we saw before. Now it auto gives us this right here, which basically says 0 to 33%, 33 to 67, 67 to 100. If it's in the bottom 3%, it gives us this red, the middle is yellow, and the top is green. So we can go through and change all of this, but honestly, this looks pretty good. So let's click on it. And so the ones that are our least sellers are these red ones right here, and the top sellers are up here. Now, this is just based on units sold, and this looks absolutely terrible. So let's kind of take this exact information, but make it a little bit better. So we're going to create a new visualization, or at least a new table. So let's click on product name, and we'll take the price, units sold, and revenue. And what I think makes the most sense for looking at revenue is these data bars right here. But there's only one problem. I can't do that because it's not summarized like units sold was. But what I can do is to get those data bars is I can come right down here. Instead of saying don't summarize, I can summarize it, and I can just click the sum. So it now is summarized. It's the exact same number, but if I right click on here as sum of revenue, I go to conditional formatting, I can now use those data bars. And so we're going to use those data bars, and we're going to say for the lowest value and the highest value, and let's just make it a nice, maybe a darker green. I don't want it to, wow, that's hideous. Let's make it this color right here, a nice dark green. And there's no negatives, so it doesn't really matter. We're going to go left to right, and you can show the bar only, but we're going to keep it because I want to see it. And we're going to go just like this. So we're going to order. And this is pretty telling. Honestly, I did not think the weatherproof jackets were performing so well, but I mean, they are by far our #1 seller. So, you know, our weatherproof jackets, multi-tool survival knives, and the nylon rope are outperforming all of our other products. So those might be the ones that I focus on the most, while duct tape, the N95 masks, and waterproof matches, I mean, those are garbage. So I might be looking to replace those in the near future with some other items that might sell a little bit better. So that's how you use conditional formatting, and it's actually pretty useful. There are a lot of times where I've done something like this in an actual visualization for work, and it looks something like this. It just depends on what you're visualizing, but this is very much a simple thing that you can do to just add a little bit more information and actual visuals to this little chart or table that you're going to create. Sometimes it's just better to have these simple visualizations on this table rather than just having the numbers themselves. Makes it a little bit more easy to read and understand. All right, before we jump into it, there is a link in the description where you can get the data that we're going to be using for these visualizations if you want to practice them yourself. Before we actually get into it, we do need to combine this. And if you download that Excel and you see this, you'll have to do the same thing. All we have to say is that this product ID is the same as this product ID purchased. And now we are good to go. We'll do one-to-many, and it's okay if it's one way. So right over here under this visualizations tab, there are lots of different options, and it can be a little bit overwhelming. You don't really know which one to choose. There are some in here that I have almost never used for my job ever. So I'll point those out as we go through, but the main focus is going to be focusing on the ones that I do use or that I have used and showing you how to actually create that visualization, maybe spice it up just a little bit. But we have a lot of them to go through, so let's jump right into it. And the very first one that we're going to start with, probably the easiest one and the one that you'll recognize the most, is a stacked bar chart. And what we're going to do is go ahead right over here to the product name, and we want this unit sold as well. So we're going to click product name, and it's going to go straight into the y-axis for us, and then we're going to click unit sold, and that will go into the x-axis. Automatically, it just kind of intuitively knows, but sometimes it will make a mistake, and then you can just fix it or flip it. And we do want this, let me make this much larger. We do want this to be a little bit more color-coded. That is what this legend is down here. So what we're going to do is drag this product name down to the legend. And now we have each product as its own color. And in previous videos, we have gone through and looked at some of these visual and general options that you have when you're actually creating these visualizations, but we're going to do some of them while we're in here as well. So we're just going to go down here. We're going to choose data labels, and we're going to shrink that. And if you go higher, the higher you go, the less you see. So if you want all of them all the way down to the green, we're going to go right about there, and we're going to make it smaller. So now we can go ahead and click anywhere outside of that visualization, and now we can create a new one. If we had just kept it like this, where we were still interacting with this visualization and we clicked on a different one, it would have then changed our visualization completely, which we don't want. So let's hit Control Z, click out of it, and now we can create a new one. Let's go right over here to this 100% stacked column chart. I'm going to click on it, drag it over here, and make it much larger. And we're going to come right over here to this customer information, and we're going to click on customer. And then we're going to go up to units sold and click on units sold. And we want to break these out. And so basically what this is doing is it's breaking it out by each of these shops. And we can see the total of what they're buying, the units sold. But we want to see exactly what products make up this percentage or this 100%. So we're going to go right over here to product name. We're going to drag that down to the legend. And as you can see, now we have each of these products, and each of the products is up here. So this backpack, we can see the backpack right here, backpack right here, and right here. And we can see which customer is buying what percentage of their purchases. So for this Prep for Anything prepping store, they have a very large percentage, 40% is duct tape. So they're buying a lot of duct tape. So really quickly, we're able to see what clients are purchasing or which clients are purchasing what products the most. So just like this Alex the Analyst Apocalypse preppers, they're buying a lot of water purifiers. We like drinking clean water. That's just what my audience likes. And so, we can easily get a quick glance of that. Again, we're going to go in here. I tend to like putting these data labels on here. That's just what I preference. So, something like this, it looks nice, it looks clean. We can always go back and change these names, which we'll do for this one. So we're going to go over here, we'll go to title, we'll go down to the text, and we'll do customer purchase, breakdown. Pretend I'm really good at spelling. And we're going to do it just like that. We'll get out of there. So now we have customer purchase breakdown, and that looks really nice. It's a good visualization, and we're going to bring that right over here. We're going to have a lot on the screen, so I may have to make them smaller or larger to fit everything. All right, so let's go on to our next one. Another really common visualization is this one right here, which is the line chart. And the line chart is great, especially when you're using things like dates. I have found this one to be the best, and a lot of people use this as well. So we're going to go right over here and click on date purchased, and then units sold. And on the x-axis, you can see it's broken up by year, quarter, month, and day. So we don't want to do it that high level. We only have 3 months of data in here. So we're going to get rid of the year. We're going to get rid of the quarter. And then we at least have this. And let's break it out, because right now we're looking at all of the units sold. So we're going to drag the product name right down here to the legend. And now it breaks it out by the actual product. And for each month in January, February, or March, you can follow these products and see how they did in each of those months. And if we wanted to, we can come right over here to the filter on the product name, and we could filter it by maybe the top 3. So let's do multi-tool survival knife, the nylon rope, and the duct tape. And we can have it just like this. And you can do those for any product that you want. But again, we just want to do it for those 3 just for an example. And that really doesn't give us a ton of information. We could even go down to the day and, it might give us a little bit more information. And so we'll keep it like that. And we can go over here. We'll change the name as well. We're not going to do this for all of them. Again, we're just looking at the different types of visualizations I think are really good to know. But we'll change this one as well to products purchased by date. We'll keep it just like that. Again, nothing fancy. We're just trying to look at a bunch of different stuff. So let's put this over here. We're down here. Now let's click out of there. And there are other ones in here that are definitely useful and you absolutely can use. Like this one is a stacked bar chart. This one is a stacked column chart. It's basically the same thing, just a different orientation. Like if we went to here, it's just a different orientation. It's the same thing, just like this clustered bar chart. Custom column chart, it's just its orientation, either horizontal or vertical. Then we have things like an area chart, a stacked area chart, not really things that I've used too much in previous positions. One that I have used though is a line and clustered column chart. So it kind of combines a few of these with, you have these bar charts as well as line charts into one visualization. So let's look at this one because this is one that I have used several times in my actual job. So for our x-axis, we'll use the product name. Then we'll look at something like the price. And so let's make this a lot larger so we can actually see it. So now we have the price, and now we can look at something like the production cost, and that can be our line y-axis. So now we're looking at the price of it, how much someone is actually paying for it, and then we're looking at how much it's costing us to actually produce that product. And so really quickly at a glance, you can kind of see that it's around the halfway to 2/3 point on most of these. You can see that the production cost is always lower than the actual price because, of course, we're out here to make a profit on these products. So let's minimize this one. We're going to put this one right down here. Let's make it even smaller. Let's click out of that. And the next one that we're going to take a look at is a scatter chart. So let's click on that and make it much larger. Oops. There we go. So let's use the price and the production cost again. And so our x-axis is the price, our y-axis is the production cost. But now we need to fill in this values right here. So let's go over here and click on the product name and drag that into values. And so now we have our values, we just don't know what they are, but we can see it. So let's drag this down to legend as well. And it breaks it out and we kind of have this scatter plot. And for this fake data that we're using, it doesn't really show a lot. But if you're using real data, you can definitely find outliers and trends and patterns using this type of visualization. Let's go ahead and make that one small as well. Drag it right down into the corner. Now let's go right over here and we have the dreaded pie charts and donut chart. Now look, I think it's kind of a joke in the data analyst community about pie charts and donut charts, but at the same time, people use them and they request them. And so sometimes you're going to use it whether you like it or not. So let's click on the donut chart and let's make this one a lot larger. And let's go over here and let's click on state. And we're also going to click on total purchased. And that's really all you have to do. These ones are pretty straightforward. You can change a few different things, like where these labels are. If you want them inside, you can also do that, and that would look totally fine. Again, I'm just not a super huge fan, but you will get this one requested. People like this and want to see it. And the reason a lot of analysts don't like using this is because when you start glancing at these, it's really hard to tell the difference between these sizes. If you look at something like this, you can easily see that this is larger. Like if you're looking at this one, the multi-tool survival knife is obviously the longest and it gets shorter, 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 shorter. But when you start getting in here, it's really hard to approximate the size. I would not be able to tell the difference between this 5.63, 5.78, 7.72. I would not be able to tell really the difference between these or kind of the difference between them very easily. That's why a lot of people don't want to use them in general. So again, I want to show you this one because I think it's worth noting and worth knowing how to use, but I don't really push people towards this because I don't think it's the best visualization available most of the time. All right, the next two are super easy, but are used all the time, maybe more than some of these even, but they're just so easy to use, so I kind of saved them for last. This one is the card, and all the card is it displays one number or multiple numbers if you want to use a multi-row card, but we'll just look at the card for now. All we're going to look at is the total purchased, and it's just going to display it just like this. And you can make it as large or as small as you'd like. And normally it goes on like the top, and you'll put card here, card here. Just for example, I'll kind of show you how this might look. So it looks something like this, right? And at the top, it'll have different, usually high overarching information. And this is super common to see. And I'm sure if you've looked at other people's visualizations, you'll see something like this. This is usually totals or averages or something like that in here, where it's super easy to look at. So like right here, this is total purchased, and we can go in and look at the minimum. And then we can go over here, and this one can be account. And so it gives us a lot of information just at a really quick glance. And then we have all of our more in-depth, colorful visualizations that kind of have more information than just a single piece like the card does. And then the very last one that I'm going to show you is this one right here, which is the table. And this one is obviously extremely popular. It's like in a little Excel table. And we can go in here and we can get the customer, wherever that is. And then we'll also get the units sold. And this is what it looks like. And it's super easy. And oftentimes you'll have it like on the side as well, and all the other visualizations over here. And so, if we're going to take all these visualizations and pretend they were like a real thing, there's a lot in here, but we'll just kind of really quickly do this. We might have something like this, and we'll make this larger, and we'll make this wider. And, we have a lot of information just in here. And this is not a project, so don't go put this on your portfolio. I'm just threw a ton of random visualizations on, this dashboard. But you can already see a lot of these you most likely have seen in other people's work and other people's visualizations on LinkedIn or on YouTube. These are very common, very, very popular. And again, we did not go through all of the ones over here. There are maps that you can use, but I haven't used maps ever in my job. There are things like gauges and decomposition trees and waterfall charts and tree maps and all these different things. But I really have never used those in my actual job, and I don't see them a lot in other people's work either. Otherwise, I would be telling you to learn these and use these. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Power BI tutorial series. Today, we are going to be working on our final project. Now, this is our final project of the Power BI tutorial series. So if you have not watched all of those videos leading up to this, I recommend going and watching those videos so you can make sure that you know all the things that we're going to be looking at in today's project. I am really excited to work on this project with you because I think it is a really good one, and it uses real data that we collected about a month ago, where I took a survey of data professionals, and this is the raw data that we're going to be looking at. And so I think it's just really interesting that we collected our own data and now we're using it for a project. We're going to transform the data using Power Query, and then we'll actually create the visualizations and finalize the dashboards, as well as create a theme and a different color scheme to kind of make it a little bit more unique. Without further ado, let's jump onto my screen and get started with the project. All right, so before we jump into it, I wanted to let you know that you can get the data below. It is on my GitHub. You can go and download this exact file that we're going to be looking at now. In the past several projects, we have been using this fake apocalypse data set. It was fun, it was, whatever. This data set is real. This is a real data set. It was a survey that I took from data professionals. I posted on LinkedIn and Twitter and all these other places. And we had about 600, 700 people who responded to the questions. So before we actually get into it and start cleaning the data and doing all this stuff in Power BI, I just wanted to show you the data. All right, so this is the CSV that I downloaded from the survey website that I used, and this is completely raw data. I haven't done anything to it at all. But let's go through the data really quickly, and we'll kind of see what we have. And we are not going to make any changes at all in Excel. We're going to do all of our transformations, or at least a few transformations, in Power BI, because again, this is a Power BI tutorial and project. So I want you to kind of learn how to use that and not use Excel, because you can go through my Excel tutorial if you want to do that. So let's just look at it in Excel, and then we'll move it over to Power BI and actually start transforming the data. So we have this unique ID. These are all the people that actually took it. Oops, I don't want to do that. We have an email, which this was completely anonymous. I didn't collect any data or user data on this. Then we have the date taken. And let's get into the actual good information. Then we have all of these questions. So we have question 1, which title fits you best? And they can choose things. Now, let's add a filter really quickly so we can look at this. Now, you had the pre-selected ones, which were like data analyst, architect, engineer, but then there was an option where you could say other, and you could specify what that was. So if you look in here, we're going to have all these different other please specify with different titles, right? And there were a lot of them. Now, typically what you want to do is really clean this up. And we're not going to be doing a ton of data cleaning, but we are going to do some in Power BI, but none in here. But typically with this amount of data and the way that it's formatted, we would do so much data cleaning with this one. I mean, there's a lot of work to be done. Like this current year's salary. This is one that I would absolutely be cleaning up because it's ranges and it has a dash and a K and all these numbers. This is something that I would be cleaning up and using, but we're not going to be cleaning this up right now. So anyways, let's just get into it. Let's see what questions we asked. We have the yearly salary. What industry do you work in? Favorite programming language? Then there were a lot of different options. So this is like one question where they picked multiple options. So how happy are you in your current position with the following? You have your salary, work-life balance. Then we have coworkers, management, upward mobility, learning new things. And they could rank it from 0 to 10. So some people ranked upward mobility at 10. Some ranked it a 0 or a 1. And again, they can answer however they want. How difficult was it to break into data? Very difficult, very easy. If you're looking for a new job, we have, what would you be looking for? Remote work, better salary, etc. We have male, female, which country are you from? And then this is more like demographics. So if you're a male, how old you are. And this was in a range. So this is like a sliding bar. So you could slide it to the exact age you had. And there's some people who are apparently 92, which if that's true, I mean, good for you, man or woman. Actually, really quickly, I'm going to see, just while we're here, I'm going to see if this is a male or a female. That's a female from India. Very cool. So we have all this information, and it is a lot of information. When you have something like this, I mean, there is so much data cleaning that can be done. I mean, I already see like 20 plus different things that I would need to do to make this a lot better. And we also have date taken and the time taken, as well as how long they took on it, like the time spent. Really interesting data. But again, this is a beginner tutorial series. This is the beginner project. So we're not going to do anything too crazy. I will be using this exact data set in a future video, doing a lot more data cleaning and creating a much more advanced visualization with what we have and what we're looking at right here. But for this video, we're just going to be doing a pretty simple visualization and dashboard that you can use to practice with or put it on your portfolio if that's where you're at right now. So let's get out of here and let's put this into Power BI. So let's exit out and let's come right over here to import data from Excel. We'll click on Power BI Final Project and open. Give that a second. Doing this all in real time. We only have the one, so we won't be practicing any joins or anything, but we're not going to load it. We're going to transform this data. So let's put it into Power Query Editor. And now we have all of our data in here, and it should look extremely familiar. Now, when I'm looking at this, when I start looking at this information, I kind of need to know beforehand what I want to get out of this. Do I need to clean every single column? Do I just need to clean a few of them? Do I need to get rid of columns? That's kind of where my head's at. And so right off the bat, I can already tell you that there are columns that we can just delete to get out of our way. So we're going to do that at the beginning so that we don't have to do that later on or they're just in our way. So I'm going to click on Browser, and then I'm going to hit Shift, and I'm going to go over here to Refer. And we're just going to go up here to Remove Columns. And everything that we do is going to go over here to this applied steps. If you've been following this series, We can remove things, add things, but anything we do will show up right over here so we can track it and go back if we need to. Now, one column that I know for sure that I'm going to be using quite a bit is this which title fits you best in your current role. Because I specifically wanted to do a breakdown of people's roles and how much they make and different stuff like that. So I know that I want to use this, but as we saw before, there's kind of the issue is it's not very clean, right? It has data analyst, data architect, engineer, scientist, database developer, and then like 100 different options, and then a student or none of these, right? And so for the purpose of this video right here, we are not going to take every single one of these options because this involves a lot more data cleaning. Let me give you an example. This says software engineer. This also says software engineer. And with AI, these two would typically be combined or standardized to software engineer, but it's not very easy to do that in Power BI. We could do that in Excel, but not really in Power BI or even SQL if we pull this from a SQL database. And you can find lots of different options of that. We have data manager and data manager. If we separated these out, these would be different options when we created our visualizations, and we don't want that. So what we are going to do, and this is going to be kind of an easy way out to just make sure that this is pretty clean and we don't have 1,000 different options. We're going to create this to other. So we're going to simplify this a lot. And then we're going to use this. So we'll have maybe 6 or 7 options instead of the, let's say 50 that we would have if we actually did the harder work, which is break it out, standardize it, and clean it up that way. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on this right here. I'm going to go up here to split column in this ribbon up top. We'll go to split column, and we want to do it by a delimiter. And if you notice, let me see if I can move this over. If you notice, we have other, and then we have this parentheses. And in no other option or way is there parentheses. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a custom, and we're going to use this open parentheses. What that's going to do is it's going to separate it by this parentheses. It's going to leave the other, and it's going to create separate columns, just one separate column for each of these. And we can do that at each occurrence, or we can do the leftmost. And we only need it for the leftmost because there's only one of these left-handed or left-sided brackets or what is it, whatever this is called. And then let's go and click OK, and it should create another column. So it's going to have point 1, point 2, and now we have, if we click on this, now we only have these options. We have analyst, architect, engineer, data scientist, database developer, other, and student looking or none. That is what we want. It makes it so much simpler, and it's not perfect, but again, I'm trying to show you what we are able to do in Power BI. So now we're just going to remove that column, and we're going to go and do the exact same thing to this one as well, because I know that we want to use this. And I really wanted to use this one as well. But if we look at this one also, there's a lot. So I said, what is your favorite programming language? And there were pre-selected answers like JavaScript, Java, C++, Python, R, things like that. And then there was an other option. And in this other option, it was free text, so they can fill it in as they want. There's 4, 5, 6 different ways that people put SQL. That is something I would standardize, and that would be the way I cleaned it, but that's not how we did it in here. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to keep that other. So we're going to split this column again. We're going to use a delimiter. And for this delimiter, though, we're going to use a colon. So we're going to say, we're going to do a colon right there. We'll just do the leftmost. We'll click OK. And then we have our options, and it's much simpler. Now, I really would have rather kept all these, and because SQL's in there quite a bit, but a lot of people don't think SQL is even a programming language. So we're going to delete that column. Now, one that I just skipped and I kind of wanted to go back to is this current yearly salary. I really want to use this. Let's see if we can use it. Here's what I want to do with it. And this is not perfect, but for this video, I want to try it. What I want to do is break up these numbers, 106, 125, and then take the average of those numbers. So then we'll use some DAX in there. So we'll take 106, 125, create that into 2 separate columns. Then we'll create a third column that will give us the average of those 2 numbers. So we'll do 106 plus 125 divided by 2, and then we'll have the average of that. Now, that is not perfect, but it's going to give us at least, an average, a kind of roundabout number, because they gave us this range. They said my salary is between 106 and 125,000. So if we say that their salary was 112,000, at least it makes it usable. It's a numeric value instead of being this, which is text, which we could use, and I'll show you how to do that, because we're going to keep this column. I'll create a copy of this, and I'll show you the difference between this and using the average. But for this data cleaning portion, let's just try it. Let's see what we can do and see if we can make it work. So first, let's create a duplicate. So we're going to duplicate the column. So now we have this copy at the very, very end. And we can use this one instead of having to use the original way, way, way back here. So we're going to leave that one how it is. And we're going to use this one. So let's go ahead and split this one up. We're going to click on the column header. Then we're going to click on split column. And we'll do it by digit to non-digit. And if you look at it right here, it's broken it out kind of in the fact that now in this one, we just have numeric values. And in this one, we have K dash numeric or just dash numeric. And now this can be easily cleaned. Whereas this one, we can just completely get rid of because it's only K. So we'll just remove that column. And then in this one, we're going to right click. We're going to click on replace values. And so if it just we'll just do a K, we'll replace with nothing. We'll do OK. And then for the last one, we'll go to replace values. And we'll do the dash or the minus sign, and we'll place that with nothing. And so now we have our values as well. Oh, we also have a plus. Let me get rid of that, because that's when some people had 250 or 225,000 plus. So for that one, the average is just going to be 225. We'll have to specify that in our DAX. I forgot. But actually, if somebody has 225, let me find this plus really quick. Let me filter by it because that's a lot faster. What we actually want to do for the purpose of this one is we want to put 225 here so that when we do 225 plus 225 divided by 2, it comes out to 225. That's just what we're going to put it as. And there's only 2 people. So I'm actually going to replace this. I'm going to do replace values. I'm going to say plus with 225. And we'll click OK. Awesome. We can unfilter these. Oops, select all. So we're going to go right up here to add column. And we're going to say custom column. And we're going to go right over here. Actually, let's make it average salary. Let's make it average salary. So we're going to insert this. And we're going to say parentheses. And we're going to say plus this, insert. And close the parentheses, divided by 2. And it says no syntax errors have been detected. Let's click on OK. And it's giving us an error. So it's saying we cannot apply operator plus to types text and text, which makes perfect sense. These aren't numbers. So let's make it a whole number. And let's make it a whole number. And then let's see if this will actually work now. Or maybe we just need to try a whole nother one. So let's try transform. Or add column, custom column. Let's try this all again. See if I can make it work. Do insert. Do this one plus this one. And we'll do divided by 2. And let's try this one. And there we go. So now let's get rid of this column. Remove columns. And we can actually remove these ones as well. Because now we have this average salary column, which when we look at this or when we use this, we can, let me see if I can just move this way, way, way over. All right, I might cut because this is taking forever. So if you take the average of these two numbers, you'll get 53. If you take the average of 0 and 40, you'll get 20. So now we have this average salary. And again, when we get to the actual visualization part, I'll show you why this isn't as useful as having this average salary. And just a reminder, this is not perfect. I wouldn't typically do this, especially if I had it in Excel or if I was, creating this survey in a different way. I would probably have a very specific value where they could do it on a slider, but this is how it is. So we've at least made it usable or more usable in my mind. And we have a few other things that we can change, like what industry do you work in, where we can break this one out. So I'm going to go ahead and break this one out, as well as this one right here. Which country do you live in? I'm going to break both of those out to where it's the country or other. I'm not going to have these other values, although there are a lot of them, because there's a lot of people who live in these different countries. But we can't really do that super well in here because, again, the same issue kept happening. Argentina, Argentine, Australia. So we can't normalize those values unless we spend just a copious amount of time doing that. So I'm going to go ahead and do these. I'm going to fast and speed this so it goes a lot faster. So I'm just going to go silent and let this happen really quick. And then we'll get to the end and we'll actually start building our visualizations. All right, so we've split them up. And as you can see, we have all these options as well as other. And I think, let me tell you, there is so much more that we could do with this. I mean, just so many other things. But this is like what the bare minimum of what we need for this project. So let's go ahead and close and apply this. And if we need to come back at any point and actually fix anything or change anything, we can. So it's not like that's permanent. So as you can see, we have everything over here. We have all of our data as it is transformed in here as well. And now we can start building out our visualization. So let's go back to our report and let's start building something out. All right, so let's add a title to our dashboard. We want to make this right at the top. We'll call this the Data Professional Survey Breakdown. And let's make that quite a bit larger. Maybe make it bold. Why not? And we'll put that in the center. And now let's add some effects. Now let's change that background to something like, that's too dark. Something like this. And I do not like that bold. Let's take that off. There we go. So something like this just as a quick title to what we're about to do, what we are about to build. So we're going to start off with the most simple visualizations that we're going to do, and we'll kind of work our way towards kind of the harder ones. So the first one that we're going to start off with is a card. And the cards are obviously like just super, super easy. They usually just display one piece of information. So we're going to go right over here to the very bottom at the unique ID, and we're going to select it. And we're going to say a count of distinct or a count, it doesn't matter. And it says 630 count of unique ID. Now, we're not going to keep that as is. We're actually going to go right over here. We're going to say rename for this visual. And it says count of unique ID, but we're going to say count of survey takers. And you can say whatever you want here, but in general, that is what it is. We're counting how many people took this survey. And that's just a kind of a total, maybe I say total amount of survey takers, but you can say count of survey takers, how many people took this survey. So let's click out of there. Let's click on card. Let's make it about the same size. We're going to drag it up here and try to make them about the same. We will in a little bit. We'll make them the same size. But for this one, we're going to look at age. So we're going to look at current age. So we're going to click on that and we'll say we want the average age. So our average age taker is almost 30 years old. So let's go right over here. We're going to say rename for this visual. We'll say average age of survey. Oops, this might be too long. Average age of survey taker. Again, name it whatever you'd like. So again, these are meant to be high level numbers. So when somebody's looking at your dashboard, they can just really quickly glance at this and know exactly what it is instead of like some of these other visualizations that we're about to create. They don't really have to dig into it, look at the x-axis, the y-axis, the different legend colors and whatnot. They can just see these high numbers and get a really quick glance of the data. Now let's create our first visualization. And what we're going to do for that one is a clustered bar chart. So let's go ahead and click on the clustered bar chart. We can create as small or as large as we'd like. And for this one, we're going to be looking at the job titles. Now, remember, we kind of change the job titles or, transform those, if you want to say that. So we're going to look at job titles, and then we're going to look at their average salary. And if you remember, we transformed that one as well. We have average salary. Now this one it looks like a text right now, so it may not work properly. And what we're actually going to do is go over here. I want to see the average salary. So let's click on average salary and see if we can change this data type from a text to a decimal number. Let's click yes. I forgot to do that when we were transforming it. And there we go. This is perfect. So now we can go back and we can select our average salary. And as you can see, it has this, this function symbol. And so now we can click on it and it'll look a lot better. And although this says average salary as the title, it's actually doing a count or the sum. So we can click average right here. And what we want to do is actually break this down by the job title. And so now we can see data scientists are making the most by far. They're making average of 93,000, at least from the survey takers that took it. Then we have our data engineers making 65,000. Data architects are making 63. And then we're the data analysts. Data analysts are right here making 55. So again, we had 630 people take this survey. And so the vast majority of them were data analysts. So this one's probably the most accurate out of all of them. And I actually don't like how this looks as the clustered bar chart. Let's try the stacked bar chart and put this as the legend. That's more what I was going for. I don't know. I didn't want as skinny because when you're doing this one, typically they have multiple options per x-axis. And so I think that's why it was that little skinny line. But this one is more what I was looking for. But let's make that smaller and let's definitely change that title because good night. This is like incredibly long. So let's go over here to this format visual. We'll go to the general, the title, and we're just going to say average salary by job title. Just like that. And this looks a lot better. Now, we're not going to kind of format our whole dashboard yet. We're going to create our visualizations and then we're going to kind of organize everything and kind of play Tetris with it to make it look the best. So we're just going to minimize this and put it right up here for now. But we will go back and kind of make everything look better at the end. And actually, while we're here, I also want to change this as well. So rename for this, we're going to say job title. Oops. Why did I do that? Job title. And for this one, we're just going to say rename average salary. There we go. Looks much better, much cleaner. Took away a lot of the anxiety that I was feeling about 2 minutes ago when we first put that up there. So let's go on to our second visualization. The next one that I'm interested in is actually what programming language people were using the most. So we have salary. There's 1,000 different things we can look at in here, but I want to know, what is people's favorite programming language? So let's take a look at that. So we have favorite programming language. Let's find that. So we have our favorite programming language, and we also have how many people actually took it, or the unique people. So right now this is columns. We don't want that. Let's do a clustered column chart. Click on this right here, and it looks like, here we go. That is kind of what we're looking for. And instead of count of unique ID, we'll say count of, let's do count of voters. And for favorite programming language, we'll say favorite programming language, and get rid of that as well. And then we're going to go into here also and change the title and say favorite programming languages, or favorite programming language, just like this. Now let's make this a lot bigger so you can see it. But really quickly at a glance, you can see Python is by far the most popular. R, other, C++, JavaScript, Java. Now, all we're seeing is the count, so it's all the same. It's just blue. We can see how many people voted for each one. But if we wanted to break it out similar to how we did with the job titles, we could still do that. So all we'd have to do is break it out or bring this job title down to the legend. And now it breaks it out like this. And that's not exactly what I was going for. I was going more for something like this, where we can see still the whole count, but now we can see who is actually voting for these things. So I'm just not a huge fan of the colors that are pre-selected here and kind of the whole theme of this dashboard. At the very end, we're going to completely revamp this, change a bunch of colors, the background, and make this look a lot nicer rather than just the white background like we have it. And so for now, let's just make this a lot smaller and put it into this corner. These will not be staying there, but we need room to create our next visualizations and just a cleaner space to do things. Now, the next thing that I really want to include is a way to break down where they're from, their country, because especially something like salary is very dependent on your country. Whereas the average salary in the United States for a data analyst may be like 60,000. In another country, it could be 20,000. That could bring down the average quite a bit. So we need a way to be able to break that down. Now, we can do something like a filled map, and there's no problem with that at all. But for what we're building, what we're creating, it's not probably going to work out the best. I mean, this looks okay. We could stick it in the corner or something. And you can do that, and that's perfectly fine. I think what I'm going to do is something like a tree map, which I don't use a lot, but I want something where they can just click on it. They can look at the values. Distinct. They can look at the values and just click on it, and it'll be right there for them. So they don't have to filter it out on their own or know geography and look at this map. They can just read Canada, other United Kingdom, India, United States, and click on that. And so, for example, let's click over here on United States. The numbers change quite a bit. Now the average salary for a data scientist is 139,000. For a data analyst, it's 80. And if we look at India, the average salary for a data scientist is 68. The average salary is 26 for a data analyst. That doesn't mean that they make less money in India. That just means that the cost of living is probably lower in India. Therefore, they don't need the higher US dollars salary. Because again, this was all done in US dollars. So just something to think about. Let's click out of that. So we'll keep that one as well. So now let's create our next visualization. This is one that I do not get to use enough in my actual job. So we're going to use it in this project. And it's going to be this gauge right here. So let's add that one. We'll put it right over here. We're going to add 2 of those. Let's just go ahead and add another one while we're at it. Because we're going to have them kind of like right here, right next to each other. The first one, and these ones are really good for kind of looking at these kind of surveys, and I don't get to work with surveys enough. But we can see, how happy are they in terms of work-life balance. So we can add that. We're going to add work-life balance. And right now it's doing a count. And if we don't have minimum or maximum values in there yet, so it's going to look kind of weird, but we're going to look at the average rate or the average score of these. Then we're going to pull this over to the minimum value. And we want to put that at the minimum and pull this over and add the maximum value. So now it actually has 0 to 10. And it shows that the average person is happy with, which one was this? Their average person is happy with their work-life balance. They rate about a 5.74 overall. Now, let's really quickly change the title of this because this is ridiculous. I want to say happy with work-life balance. And this is their rating. Change it to whatever title you want. That's what I'm going to do. And then we'll also do happy with their salary. Let's click on salary. We'll add that to minimum. And we'll add the maximum value as well to make sure that we know how to use that. And then we'll take the average. So not many people are happy with their salary, I'm just finding out. I mean, this is a real survey. This is real data. So, it's pretty interesting. Let's go to the title. Let's go to happy with, or maybe it's happiness. Happiness with salary. Maybe that's what we should make it. And I'm going to change that over here as well. I think it sounds better. Some of this I've already planned out. Some I haven't. This is not something I've planned out. So we're going to say happiness with work-life balance, happiness with salary. Really interesting. We may go back and tweak these just a little bit in the future, but the very last visualization that we're going to do is male versus female. Gotta have that in there. I don't typically like pie charts and donut charts, but I'm just feeling it. So let's try it. And we will do, let's see, let's make this larger. So we have male, female. And what do we want to look at? Like, what do we want to measure? So we have male versus female. We can measure anything, but maybe what we'll do is the average salary again. I mean, we've kind of only looked at salary once in this one right here, and a little bit of like how happy they are. But we'll look at the average salary between males and females, and then we'll look at not the current age. Oops, I meant average salary. And then we'll look at the average. And it looks like the average salary is actually really close versus males versus females. 55 for female versus 53 for male. So actually the females are a little bit higher. Congratulations. So they're just a little bit higher in terms of pay. So now we need to start organizing all of this, cleaning it up, making it look a lot better than it does right now. It looks great, but we can do a lot more with this. So we're going to keep these or all these kind of over on this left-hand side. I'm going to put this, I want this up here. We also need to change that title. I want this up here. And again, we're going to kind of change the theme as we go. I just want to format it right. I'll have it just like this. Let's change the title of this. Let's go to title. And we're going to say country of survey takers. I'm not, the survey takers, I'm not really stuck on that. If you find something better, you think of something better, I would go with that. But, it definitely doesn't look bad. And where'd my other visualization go? There it goes. I think this one, I want to make kind of more tall. So I might move it this way. Jeez, this is such a, I hate having a lot of visualizations on here. It just really is annoying to me. So what we're going to do, I think we're going to step this to the side, put this to the side as well. I want to make it to where it's just, okay, I didn't want it to cut off. We'll do that. I might make these, a little bigger actually. So I want it to kind of match the size, like right there. I'll match this. Perfect. This one I kind of want to bring over here and bring it down a little bit. Maybe something like this. Maybe. I'm not sure. I'm not sold on that. I added a few different visualizations that I didn't have in my original. So now I'm kind of having to do this on the fly. So I might fast forward some of the parts where I'm like really thinking about it or taking too much time on it. But I'm going to bring this down a little bit actually, because I don't like how close that is to the text above it. But one thing we do need to do, I'm going to put this up kind of like this. I think that looks fine. I think I'm going to put this at the very bottom. So let's make some room for it. Right, just like that. Stretch it to the side and we'll lower it. And I think we'll keep that as is. Kind of like this. Okay, there's a lot going on in here, and there are some things I'm just noticing as we're walking through this that I kind of missed. Like I need to change some titles and stuff like that. So let me go ahead and change some of those things. So we're going to do title. We're going to do average salary by gender or by sex. Do it like that. Average salary by sex. I also don't like that it's in the middle. I don't like that it's on the outside. I want them on the inside for this. So let's go to the details. Let's go to inside and see if that looks any better. Oh, that looks terrible. Let me see if I can change that. Maybe I don't. No, I definitely want it. I guess we'll do outside. You can't even see the information. Oh, the decimal's crazy long. Let me go and see if I can change that decimal to just like a whole number or like 1.1, because that's a problem. So maybe I need to go over here to the value. All right, so I think I want to change this one. It's just not working out exactly how I wanted. And you guys know if I make mistakes, I'm going to keep it in here so you guys can see it. I hope that this was going to turn out better, but it didn't. One that I do want to add, because it's kind of a breakdown and a nice visualization, I want to add this difficulty piece. So I want to add this, how difficult was it for you to break into data science? Let's get rid of these. And I want to click on this really quickly, see what it gives us. Values. Okay. So now this shows us percentages of how easy it was. Again, it's neither easy nor difficult, difficult, easy, very difficult, very easy. These numbers make absolutely no sense. We need to kind of order them a little better. So I'm going to come over here to slices. We have our colors over here. We want very difficult to be like the most difficult. So I'm going to make that red. And then we want difficult to be maybe like an orange. Let's see if we can find an orange. There we have an orange. Oh, this does not look red enough. There we go. Oh, no. Very difficult is red. Difficult is orange. We have neither easy nor difficult, and that's kind of a neutral. Let's see if we have something neutral in here. Kind of like this yellow. I don't know. Let's try it out. Then we have easy and very easy, and these will be like our blues. So I'm going to keep that. Kind of like a dark blue-ish. And then our blue for super easy is just going to be like really blue. And that doesn't look bad. Look, I'm not a color person. I'm not great with colors, and we're going to kind of organize this in just a little bit. But this looks better to me. But we need to change up some stuff as well, like the title. We need to do difficulty to break into data. There we go. And we're also going to change this title right here. We'll just say difficulty. Is that how you spell difficulty? Difficulty. This looks better to me. Again, not perfect, and there's 1,000 different things you could have done, but that's just what we're going to do. I need to go through here and see what I need to change. So right off the bat, I can see I need to change this to, let's see, right here. We're going to rename this job title, just like we did in this one right here. Count of voters, that's fine. Programming language, breaking into difficulty, happiness, average count. Okay, so what we have here is very close to a finished product. Now, it's not 100% complete. I mean, I do want to make it look a little nicer rather than just the typical white. So what we're going to do, we're going to go up here. We'll go to, View. And we have all these different filters. And we're just going to play around with it. See if we can find something that we like. This doesn't look too bad. It's not really my style. We can do this one, Frontier. This is pretty neat. I kind of am digging this. We might come back to it. I like the natural tones. I don't know why I said tones like that, but I did. This one's not bad, but I don't like how dark that is. And so maybe it's like, we change like the background color of all of these, as well as match it with something else. Whatever you want, genuinely. You customize this however you want. I kind of like this one. It's kind of groovy, man. And it's not perfect by any means, but what we can do, and we can customize this current theme. We can come in here, customize this theme however we'd like. I personally don't want color 5, which is the data analyst color. I don't like it. I don't want to go and change it because I don't like it. But I don't really like that color per se. I might want to choose a different color. But it has to be like this muted, it has a style to it. So you can come in here and you can customize this and make it however you'd like and really mess around with it, play around with it. For me, I'm just going to keep it how it is because I don't really want to mess with it and break it or anything like that. So let me just put that up just a tiny bit. So this is it. This is the project. I hope that it was helpful. I am not joking when I say that because I'm going to do a different project. I'm going to go really in depth in another project. It's probably going to be like a 2-hour project. It's going to be crazy long. For a YouTube video. But I can see doing 1,000 different things with this data, creating a really great dashboard, really cleaning the data, which is a large part of actually doing this. And we didn't do much data cleaning at all. There's just so much you can do with this. And so really dig into this, see what you like, see what you don't like, see what you want to clean, what you don't want to clean. You could put it in SQL, you could put it in Excel, and just standardize the data to make it a lot more usable. Do whatever you want with it. I mean, I took this survey for you guys that we could use it. So go out and use it and make the best dashboard that you can possibly do. So I hope that this was helpful. I hope that you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe below, and I'll see you in the next video.